All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter today. I think I've been the presenter for 3 events this week. Welcome to today's webinar event on entering a budget in Church Windows accounting. We're going to be together for the next 20 minutes or so, maybe less. We'll see if the topic goes that long. I will definitely be discussing the topic or covering what the presentation format of it for no longer than 20 minutes after the hour. If you do have questions about it and you have time to stick around, please feel free to do so. I will do my best to answer those questions. I'll try to keep an eye on them during the webinar event too. If you do have a question, please type it in the questions portion of your webinar control panel. Again, I'll try to keep an eye on those. See what I can't do to answer those questions after repeating it for everyone's benefit here. If you have never attended a webinar event before and you have, say, a single monitor set up, use the little red arrow at the top of your sidebar there to minimize the control panel. Will allow you to get a full visual effect of the presentation, or drag it off to your second monitor or desktop if you've got a dual monitor setup. Thank you for attending. It's great to have everybody here. Again, we're here to talk about entering the budget. And the reason why we're discussing this today primarily is because more and more users, as we approach the end of the year, who are running Church Windows on a calendar year, are already doing their budget planning, and we're getting calls on that through support. So you can never really get started on your budget development or planning for Church Windows for the next accounting year. There's no need to wait. We don't need to be finished with 2016 in order to begin working in our new 2017 accounting year. And many of our users or longtime users who have been using it for some time are aware of that, and they're beginning their budget planning, opening their year, and getting their budget entered now. We're just talking about some budget basics here about how to get it entered. We're not here to talk about the end of year procedure. If you have questions about opening your next accounting year, then we would encourage you to go to churchwindows.com. Down here on the left-hand side under support, below this, using Church Windows Balloon, you'll see one here called a link called New Year Prep and Help right there on the left-hand side, that when you click on that, it'll take you to the New Year Prep and Help page with all of our documentations and movies and documents on end-of-year procedure, or in this case, opening your next accounting year. It would be right down here under accounting, New Year prep and steps right here. And we have users who have already opened their new year, reworking their chart of accounts, entering their budget figures, cleaning up their chart of accounts, what have you. So no need to wait, okay? We will probably be hosting, since we have all this material out here already, we probably won't be doing much on the end of year procedures until we get closer to the end of the year, near December. But just be aware all of this information is here. All right, so when the new year is open in Church Windows, or in any accounting year, the function works exactly the same way. So we're not going to go through the end of year process. We're just going to show you a few things about the budget and where to enter it and how it's entered, what have you. The workbook we're working with today is A201, pages 2 through 6 or 2 through 7, depending on the version. So if you have the accounting workbooks and are looking at the material I'm using as my guide for the event today, that is where it can be found. If you don't have the Church Windows training workbooks, you can certainly go online to our online store and purchase those if you wish. The downloadable copy, a PDF file that you can just save and print to from your local machine. So the first thing about budget entry process, or the budget in general, it's not common for Church Windows, it's just general accounting, is that a budget is, it's important to remember that budget isn't actual money. Budget is just an estimate or guess, a calculated guess on how much money we're going to be bringing in income and how much we're going to be spending, for the upcoming accounting year, or for any accounting year that we're working in, okay? So what that means is we do have to have income and expense accounts in our chart of accounts. And of course, when a budget is entered, unless it's by vote or election or something, committee, the budget is never generally changed once it's been approved and entered. Okay? But again, it's just a guess. The reason why this is important, we mention this, is because we hear about it all the time. Folks really, call us. And yes, we do try to keep within our budget if at all possible. That's the purpose of it. But we all know that can't always occur. Emergency expenses come up. Something happens, furnace breaks, the roof leaks, what have you. Those may be things that we haven't anticipated. But you've got to build those contingencies and those emergencies into your budget as well. Okay? But a budget is an estimate. Okay? We try to keep within it, but it doesn't always happen that way. To access our budget screen, I kind of did go to that prematurely. We go to budgets in the top left, and then right here the budget jars in the upper left corner, and that opens our budget window. Okay? A few things about the budget screen here. Right here in the upper left corner, right here under the budgets where it says total income, that's a search field right above where it says accounts and subtotals. Okay? So if I want to search for a specific account, I would just click the X to clear it out, and we'll type in something like building fund contributions, and notice it is only revealing income and expense accounts here. So we're going to choose our building fund contributions, and notice it now jumps down to the account that I've selected or searched for in my search field. You can also click the down arrow, and it'll show all of your income and expenses, of course, that you have in your chart of accounts there. And again, that's the important thing to keep in mind here too, is this account, this report, or this list lists all of the income accounts and expense accounts that are in our chart of accounts, not just those that are budgeted. Okay? So once I've selected a specific account, we notice here that we've got a column in the middle called budgeted, right here. Budgeted, and it's got a series of check boxes down here. Okay? And simply, what you do is that once, if you wish to budget and enter a budget for an account, you simply put a check mark in that budgeted box. So notice once we put a check mark there, it does, over on the right-hand side, reveal the account name, a place where we can enter either an annual budget, quarterly, or monthly. Okay? It defaults to selecting annual by default. But you can choose, or I'm sorry, it is on monthly, isn't it? Sorry, it should be selecting annual, but we're going to change it to annual. Basically, the three types are: annual is to be distributed, will distribute the money evenly over the 4 quarters and 12 months under monthly. Quarterly is when you want to enter a specific amount for a particular quarter or all the quarters. Or monthly would be allow you the control to be able to enter a monthly specific amounts, budget amounts per month. Okay. To kind of go back to my original statement about how a budget is simply an estimate of our income and expenses, I also like to sort of add my own tag onto that by stating that it is important to budget both income and expenses. It's really difficult for us to estimate how much money we're going to be spending in a particular accounting period or year if we're also not trying to figure out how much we're going to be bringing in. Okay? So it really is important to budget both income and expenses. If you go, okay, well, we're going to bring in, $250,000 in income this year, and yet your expense budget is, $300,000, where is the other additional $50,000 going to come from? Okay? So, it is important to budget both. I only mention that because, again, as a technician, I see it with users all the time, as they only budget one, not the other. Okay, so when we want to enter a budget, so let's say we're going to use our building fund contributions. Okay, we're going to change it to monthly or to annual here, and we're just going to key in an annual budget amount. So we just choose the radio button, and I just key in the amount right here, and we're going to type in $25,471, and then I just simply click on the word annual again, and notice it does distribute the amount across both quarterly and monthly, at least as best it can. So notice here, when we do look at these quarterly and monthly amounts, that isn't an exact even amount. It does make up the difference. It does spread it out across quarterly nicely, with the dollar difference on that being made up in the fourth quarter. So we notice it says 63.67 in quarter 4. But in terms of monthly, And this budget amounts in Church Windows accounting cannot be entered with anything other than whole dollar amounts. It doesn't permit us to enter cents. In terms of that, now notice that under monthly, though, it does make up for an imbalance that may occur in the final month of the year. Okay, so there does appear to be a $5 difference on that or so, which you certainly can go down to monthly and make that adjustment if you wish. Okay. We don't permit the entry of cents on this because generally in virtually all cases, the pennies that would be entered for a budget really don't mean that much in the overall larger scheme of things. So we decided in accounting that we would simply remove the ability to be able to enter cents or pennies. Okay. So that's how we would enter an amount that would be set for, say, annual. If you decided that you wanted to use a quarterly budget amount, you could simply okay, well, we're going to do contributions for missions. So I would click on the contributions for missions, and if I click on, well, actually, let's not. Let's go down to something else here under our expenses and take a look at that. Let me do a search instead. So yeah, we'll do mission fund expenses. This may already be a budgeted account. It's not. So a good one here, an example. Okay, so mission fund expense. It's not a budgeted account. We're putting the budget checkbox in there. We're going to now come over here and choose quarterly, and we're going to say that most of our expenses for our missions are our missionaries travel, say, in the second and the third quarter. So here, I'm just doing an estimate here, folks. So we can go, okay, we're anticipating spending, $6,500 in quarter 2, and we're expecting to spend $8,500 in quarter 3. Okay, and again, putting my radio marking my radio button for quarterly allows me the flexibility to do that. Okay, and it does also then total it for the total amount under annual, and notice it does distribute it across the 2 quarters or the 2 quarters with each month under monthly. Okay, so the system is pretty smart that way in terms of the information that you're entering. So when I run something like my treasurer's report, I'm going to see, budget for period is only going to show for either month or quarter for April through September, and it'll show nothing for January through March or October through December. Okay? Because that's not when I have my budget entered. For the annual budget, it would show a total of $15,000. But in terms of those monthly and quarterly breakdowns, it will only appear in the months that I've entered, in the quarters I've entered it for, nothing else. Okay? And finally, in the terms of monthly, a good example of that would be something like insurance. So if I do property insurance here, and we select that account, again, not currently a budgeted account. If I click in here and I choose the budgeted box, it goes down to monthly, and we're going to say that our insurance premiums are paid twice a year in April and in October. And notice here I can literally just put those into each one of those months separately, and it will put those into quarter 2 and quarter 4 on my quarterly and still total it for my annual. Okay? The monthly offers the greatest amount of variable distribution. If I have an account that I literally want to enter a separate amount, budget amount, whether it's income or an expense for each one of those months, absolutely monthly will permit us to do that. It will total them up by quarter and for the year either way. Okay? There's really nothing too terribly challenging for entering the budget here. It's just it can be somewhat tedious, once your committee's gotten you the report or with those budget totals on it. This is how you enter the budget in here, into Church Windows Accounting. Okay? On page 5 of the workbooks, it does make a note there that it says after you've been using Church Windows Accounting for a year, doesn't mean you have to have a budget entered for a year, but you at least have a year's worth of income and expenses in there, transactions posted. We can use the budget projection feature in the software to help us prepare the next year's budget if you wish. We're not going to go into that today. But this would be the manual entry of that. Even if I did use the budget development, budget projection feature in the software, I can still come into this budget screen and edit these amounts as needed. So if my across the board increase or decrease of my budget amounts based on the budget projection aren't suitable for all accounts and only some, I can still use it for the whole entire thing and then come in here and edit those amounts that need to be, kind of tweaked and adjusted individually. Okay. Finally, this is one of the, to me personally, I think it's really one of the best features I think in the software is the ability for us to be able to budget for subtotal. And what I mean by that is basically a good example of that. Some of them we can't do depending on if it says under designated expenses. Notice it says NA or total memorial fund expenses. It says NA next to those. Well, it isn't allowing us to budget for subtotal there because those expenses or income accounts are linked to different funds. And it will only allow us to budget for a grouping or subtotaling of accounts when they are in fact linked to the same fund. So a good example of this, and I've used this for a long time, is say our utilities. So we see right here we've got our arrow with a called a subtotal called total utilities. It's not budgeted, but I do have each one of my utilities expenses for the variety of utilities we have with their own separate budgets. Okay? So if I now click on, say, total utilities, it does total all of my accounts that are within it together. But it just so $26,699 is the total budget. Well, if I don't want to budget for each one of those utilities separately, I can put a check mark in the total utilities, and it will pop up and say this will remove budgets for subsidiary accounts and or subtotals. Continue. Yes. And what that does is it puts the full $26,699 into a grouping of accounts called total utilities and removes them from each individual account. And so really what we're talking about here, though, is the collective utilities expense total for the year as opposed to one individual account. Okay? So, if you kind of want to put that into a picture of how that might affect you, a budget might be better balanced when it's budgeted for utilities, and it would allow for some flexibility and some variance on that if we have a particularly, say, mild winter or a particularly hot summer, that those gas and electric expenses, if one's over budget, the other one that might be under budget and help offset that. Okay? So just an FYI, the budget for subtotal is a really nice flexible option that you have that perhaps you're unaware of. Again, it doesn't matter how much necessarily we're spending on each one of those individual utilities. What we're saying is it's more important of what we're spending in them collectively by the end of the year as opposed to one single account. Just another option. Okay? But that's how you budget for subtotal. Maybe the accounts wouldn't have been checked. If I say yes to deleting the budget item, now notice there's no budget in anything. Okay? I could go in and budget single accounts if I wish, or if I just click total utilities, it works just like the regular budget amounts. I would just have to come in here and type in the annual budget amount or whichever one I wanted to use, and again it'll auto distribute it, or I can key in them in separately by month or quarter. Okay, that's really it, folks, with regards to entering the budget. We're about a minute before, 20 minutes after, so that's, I'm done talking about how to enter the budget in the into Church Windows Accounting here. Let me see what questions we have here. I would like a webinar on the budget projection and budget report features. I've never figured out what they are for or do. Well, Diane, we may already have something out there on the YouTube channel. Let's take a look. Let me see. Let's see what we find. It's something that hasn't changed for quite some time. If there's not something out here, I'll certainly be happy to go ahead and pass that on to, the powers that be that make that decision. But if we put in, say, budget, new budget year, I don't know if these include that, but it might be worthwhile going to the YouTube channel to find that. Maybe there's not one here. But first thing so here it is. This is basically, I think, on the one from last year. on here. It may cover the same thing we've covered today, but it might be worthwhile taking a peek at. But definitely I'll make sure that that folks know about that, or about your request. All right, I'm just going to wait here and see if folks are typing in other questions. I know that that can be kind of lengthy. All right, nothing coming in so far. Looks like folks are kind of diving out of the webinar pretty quickly here. I know it's kind of an unusual time that we normally don't have these. Yep, indeed. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that that gets passed on to the folks there about this. You're welcome, Deborah. Thank you all. All righty. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, folks. So this webinar event presentation will be out on the YouTube channel by this coming Friday, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And we hope to see you all at another Church Windows User Group webinar event. All right. Thank you all. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.